Yo, what's up guys, it's your boy Sami here. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto sealed alongside Hela by Odin, and falls in love with her, part 1. Hope you'll enjoy this video. So before we start, please subscribe to our channel, and like this video. So let's get into the video. Asgard. The home to many, most notably Thor, Odin, and at one point in time Loki. It was a beautiful land made of giant gold buildings, and breathtaking landscapes. Now however it looks a lot different. What was once a beautiful sight was now dull, and looking worn down. If one were to look down into the actual city, they would see hundreds of Asgardian soldiers lying dead on the ground, blades embedded into different parts of their bodies. All but one soldier was dead. The warriors met their end by the same person. The person responsible for the massacre was a woman who looked no older than 25. She wore a form-fitting black and dark green bodysuit with a portion of the shoulders missing. She has long flowing black hair, as well as dark shadows around her eyes. Her name is Hela, Odin's daughter, the firstborn child of the former king of Asgard. Go back to whatever cave you crept out from. Yell the final Asgardian warrior, you evil demoness, he added before charging. Unfortunately for him, he didn't get very far, as Hela wounded her arm back, and created a blade that pierced the man's body. He was left suspended on the blade, his feet not touching the ground. Taking a look around to make sure no one is standing, she turns around to her companion. He's a bald-headed man with 2 tattoos on his head, and armor. This is Scourge, the man she ended up giving a job to. He didn't exactly accept the answer, and didn't get killed for it. Come now. We have things to do, she says, as she walks past him. Scourge takes one look around before following suit. The two made their way through Asgard in the direction of the Bifrost. To both of their surprise, half the sword that activates the Bifrost was missing. Impossible, Scourge says while running up the steps. It was just here, he added before turning to look at Hela. The goddess narrowed her eyes in anger before turning around and walking away. Scourge caught up to her and said, "We'll find this sword. Whoever took it can't be too far away. See to it that you do. But never mind that now. There's something much more important we must do. Hurry along now," Hela told him. Seeing that she wasn't in the best of moods, he didn't speak and simply walked faster to keep pace. He wondered where they were going. To his confusion, she took them to Odin's throne room. Having not been in there that many times, he looked around taking in the sights. He stopped when he noticed Hela stopped walking and was looking up at the mural on the ceiling. The goddess of death felt a deep anger flow through her as she looked at the images. This is what Odin replaced the truth with, she hissed out as she took in the pictures of Thor and Loki. Look at these lies. Goblins and garden parties, she hissed. She looked at the next images. Peace treaties. She said no more, instead opting to create multiple blades and strike the ceiling at different points. Scourge watched as the ceiling began breaking before completely falling down. He moved out of the way so as to not get hit by debris while staying put. When the slight smoke cleared, he noticed a different mural. Scourge frowned in confusion as he stared at the new images. Odin in the center, around him images of battles portraying Hela and himself, as well as one other notable person. Hela began explaining to him the story of how Asgard was a force to be reckoned with, before Odin seemingly had a change of heart. He turned part of her out, as his attention was focused on one image in particular. Odin and Hela side by side. Odin holding up his golden staff, and Hela holding up a hammer that looked like the one Thor used. What really caught his attention was the other man. In that same image there was a blonde man standing behind Hela. The shocking part was that his arm was holding her around the waist, pulling her towards him. He too had a staff being held up into the air. It was nothing fancy, a simply thin black staff with a C shape at the end of it. And, as our ambition grew greater than his, the old man decided to seal us away until the end of time, she finished. Whether she knew that Scourge wasn't listening, he didn't know, but he was thankful she didn't call him out on it. He was tempted to ask her who the guy was in the picture, but didn't get the chance, as she continued on forwards. "Let's go," she told him. The two walked down a few sets of stairs before Scourge realized where they were. Odin's vault, he whispered to himself. He had only ever heard of this place. It was said to contain only the most powerful artifacts. They walked down the path, lined on both sides with relics. Hela stopped at a golden gauntlet. "Fake," she said, as she knocked it over. "Most of this stuff is fake anyways," she commented, as she looked at the casket of ancient winters. The crown, she noted, was smaller than she expected. The tesseract was, in her opinion, not bad. Finally she came across the item she was looking for. "Now this is truly special. The eternal flame," she said, as she dipped her hand in it. She pulled it out, and Scourge watched as the flames danced in the palm of her hand. Hela produced a weapon out of her sleeve and proceeded to smash the ground until a portion caved in. Looking down, all that could be seen was darkness. The goddess turned around. "Want to see what real power looks like?" she asked before letting herself fall backwards into the pit. She flipped right side up on the way down and landed gracefully. She looked at the bodies of all her warriors and her trusted dog in sadness. "With the eternal flame you were reborn," she exclaimed before slamming her hand on the ground. The flames turned green and began consuming everything around her inside the room. The skeletons of the long-dead warriors lit up in green flames before giving them life. Fenris's eyes glowed before it too began standing on all fours. Soon her former comrades were all awake and began walking towards her before kneeling. "I've missed you," she said looking at Fenris. "I've missed you all," she repeated to everyone else. She waved her hand, and all the undead warriors began jumping out of the hole. "We're still missing one," she said quietly to herself as she walked deeper into the room. She walked for a good 5 minutes down a set of stairs until she found what she was looking for. It was a pitch-black room. The only light visible was a small fire in the corner of the room that didn't seem to give off much light. In the center was what looked like a large boulder. Etched into the stone were hundreds upon hundreds of Asgardian runes. "The old fool really outdid himself with this," she said as she ran her hand along the stone. Her prison weakened with his death, but not his. It made sense to her though. Of the two, he was the stronger one. Not that she'd ever admit it to him, she didn't want him to get a big head. She placed both of her hands on it before pushing her power into it. The runes glowed a bright green before cracks began appearing on its surface. Soon it was done. The boulder exploded. Blackness was all he knew. He didn't feel anything around him, see anything, or hear anything. It wasn't that he was deaf, no, there just wasn't anything around to make any noise except for his own breathing. All he had were his thoughts. He didn't know how long it had been since he'd been trapped here. He'd long since lost track. It felt like forever though. Most of the time he spent going over just how he had ended up here. It had been so sudden. His life was great. He and Sasuke had defeated Kagaya with a bit of help from the sage. The two worked out their issues, and Sasuke had finally seen the error of his ways, as Itachi had wished. Everything was good, but over time he noticed something strange. As he grew, so too did his power. It seemed that Hagoromo had given him more than just a small power boost. Eventually his power became so great he had no equal on his planet. When his time finally came, and he died of old age, he found himself in a similar room as the one where he had met his mom. Only this time he wasn't with his mom. The only other person in that place was a whitish yellow figure with no distinguishable features. When he asked who he was, the figure referred to itself as the one above all. He explained how his power had reached heights that should have been unattainable to mere humans. As such, he would not be going to the heaven that his world leads to. Instead, he would awaken and reside in a place called Asgard. Before the blonde had a chance to protest, he was ejected from the space and awoke in a completely different place. Not only that, but he looked the way he did when he was 24 and had his old power intact. After a few years in his new home, he joined their army and quickly rose through the ranks. Eventually his power was known throughout the lands, and he found himself as Odin's right-hand man. His word was only less impactful than Odin's himself and his daughter Hela. Hela and himself were Odin's main weapons in their conquests. The two of them would lead the charges against enemies, both invading and defending, and together took many lands. The 9 realms were won basically because of them too. Their chemistry was good, so well that they were almost inseparable. It came as no surprise to anyone when word got out that the two were together. Over time they grew even closer, and eventually with Odin's blessing they wed. They were powerful, they were feared and respected, everything was good. That was until Odin feared that Hela's ambition for power and dominance was growing out of hand. Odin had a difficult choice to make. He loved his daughter and son-in-law, but feared for the future. He knew that wherever Hela went her husband would follow. His fear drove him to seal them away for all of eternity. The blonde never saw it coming, as one moment he and Hela had just finished a hard battle and were exhausted. As they were preparing to depart, Odin had ambushed them. A beam of light from Odin's staff was the last thing he saw before the familiar blackness took over. His musings were interrupted as a green light appeared in front of him. His eyes grew wide as he realized what was happening. Suddenly, for the first time in years, he hears her voice. "Welcome back, darling," he hears. He couldn't see her, as the bright green light from the fire, as well as not seeing light in years, had left him sensitive for the moment. It would take hours or days for a normal person to recuperate from this. For him, however, it only took a few minutes. When his eyesight was back, he finally saw her face. Hela was as beautiful as he remembered. He walked forward and wrapped her in a hug. She sighed, but returned the embrace nonetheless. Emotions and such were never really her thing, but she'd make an exception. He lets her go and takes a look around at the now broken rock he was in. "So what have I missed? Where's that old man?" he asked, referring to Odin. "The old man is dead," she said happily before taking a look at his tattered clothing. Before anything else though, she trailed off. She snapped her fingers in his direction, and on him a new set of clothing appeared. He now had on a pair of black pants, along with a form-fitting black and green shirt. Over the shirt was a piece of black armor covering the chest and shoulders, but leaving the sides open. He had matching arm guards on both arms. "Matching colors, huh?" He grinned at her. She snorted quickly in amusement before walking off. "Come now, I'll fill you in on what's going on," she told him. He followed suit and left the room and jumped out of the hole they were in. Scourge noticed him and realized it was the same guy he'd seen in the mural. He looked innocent enough, unlike Hela, but he felt something was off about the man. Odin's gotten some new ones since the last time I was here. Naruto commented as he walked alongside Hela. Yes. Too bad most of the things in here are either fake or weak, she says before turning to tell him something. The two noticed that their blonde companion was no longer walking alongside them. Turning around, they found him looking at a glowing blue cube. That's the only decent thing in this place, she commented to him. He didn't answer, instead his gaze was kept on the cube. He was looking at with concentration she hadn't seen from him before. What is it, darling? She asked. Again he didn't reply, instead he picked the cube up and began to close his hand around it, then began adding pressure. In a matter of seconds the cube let off a small pulse of power before it was crushed. When he opened his hand again they noticed a small blue stone inside the small pile of glass that was the cube. Naruto dropped the glass, leaving only the stone in his hand. So this is an infinity stone, the blonde said to himself. Odin told me about these stones once. There's 6 of them, each giving the user great power, depending on what stone he or she has in their possession. This will be useful, he commented. He took off his arm guard and pulled his sleeve back. On his forearm was a simple storage seal from when he was alive. He placed the stone close to it, and the others watched as the stone disappeared. The seal glowed briefly before it died down. Well, now that that's done, Naruto began, as he went and wrapped an arm around his wife. Lead the way, he finished. She shook her head in amusement, but continued nonetheless. Scourge meanwhile watched in confusion the whole time. He was about to speak when his new queen turned her attention to him. Find the sword. I don't care if you need to turn Asgard upside down. I want it found. Understood? She asked. Scourge gulped, but nodded. Good. We'll be back in a few hours. Now go. The man left the vault on a mission, for he knew if he failed he was as good as dead. So where are we going? Naruto asked. Hela let a smirk grace her face. To our chambers, of course. It's been over 1500 years, you know. I'm getting impatient, let's go, she told him. Naruto's eyes widened in excitement, as he knew he was in for a good time, and hurried after her. After a few hours of fun, and a brief explanation later, the two now refreshed entities were standing before the inhabitants of Asgard. Hela looks out at the people before speaking up. Everyone here has decided against our rule, she says, referring to herself and Naruto. One of you knows who stole the sword to activate the Bifrost, or one of you yourselves has stolen it. So we're going to give you little incentive to hand it over. You're there. She points at a woman in the crowd. Bring her forth. On command her warriors retrieved the woman. She was crying, pleading to be let go, but her pleas fell on deaf ears. A public execution. Haven't seen one of those in a long time, Naruto commented, as he watched Hela present Scourge with an axe. Just as the man was about to bring the axe down, a man in the crowd admitted that he knew where the sword was. Take us, she ordered. They were taken to a mountainside where 2 giant doors were closed. The goddess began creating blades, but a hand on her shoulder stopped her. Please allow me. I haven't been able to really stretch my legs since I've been free, he told her. She took a step back and gave him some space. Very well. Smiling at her, he raised his hand in the direction of the door and used his magnet release to forcefully pull the door off the mountain. It remained floating in midair until he dropped it down, using it as a bridge for them to get across. After you, my queen, he told her as he extended his hand. With that being said, the army headed in. She walked in with her army following suit, only to find out that the chamber was now empty. The undead warriors began storming the room looking for any hidden citizens, only to come up with nothing. Hela narrowed her eyes in anger, and was about to speak before she was cut off by a banging sound. Then another. That's coming from the throne room, Naruto commented, as he looked in that direction. Thor is here. I'll be sure to kill him this time, Hela said. Who's Thor? Naruto asked. My brother. The god of thunder, she told him, using air quotes when saying his title. Your brother? Perhaps I should meet him, he said, rubbing his chin. But before that, do you mind making me another staff member? I could make one myself, but it wouldn't work for what I have in mind, he asked her. Hela brought her arm up in his direction. On command, a pole began extending out of her sleeve until finally the whole thing was revealed. Scourge noticed it was the exact same one he had in the picture on the mural. The blonde held it up for a second, making sure everything was right before nodding in satisfaction. He rolled up his sleeve and smacked his forearm, allowing a poof of smoke to appear. Once cleared, it was revealed to be the space stone he had taken from the cube. Holding it in his right hand, he slammed it into his staff just under where the C shape at the top began. The stone let off a pulse of power as it sat in the staff before calming down. Now let's see if this works, he said, as he applied a little chakra to the staff. It worked, as the stone began to glow, and a dark blue portal appeared in front of him. Alright, now we can go, he said, as he held his hand out to his wife. She takes his hand and walks forward, but not before stopping to speak to her executioner. Deal with the people, she ordered, as they left through the portal. The 2 deities reappeared in front of a shocked Thor, who wasn't expecting this at all. Before the god of thunder could speak, Naruto stepped forward. You must be Thor, nice to meet you, he said calmly. Thor frowned, not understanding who this strange man was. Who the hell are you? He questioned he'd ever seen this man before. Oh right, my bad, I haven't introduced myself yet. Naruto Uzumaki, I'm your brother-in-law. Thor was baffled. If the situation wasn't so dire he'd believe this to be one of Loki's tricks brother-in-law. He repeated to make sure he hadn't misheard. A nod was his answer. MHM. I married your sister a long time ago. Isn't she the greatest? He asked, turning his head to glance at her. Now Thor knew something was very wrong. His sister, the greatest? Most definitely not. The demigod turned to his sister. He's joking, right? She let out a chuckle. No, he's not joking. I actually did marry this simpleton a long time ago. She replied while running a finger under the blonde's chin. But let's not discuss that now. You're in my seat, she said, as she ran her hands through her hair, allowing her antler-like headpiece to appear. Believe me, I'd love for someone to rule Asgard, but it can't be you because you're the worst, Thor replied. Hela turned to the blonde. Don't interfere, was all she said before the two siblings began their duel. The blonde frowned, but complied nonetheless. As the two were duking it out, he could sense multiple battles happening near the Bifrost. I'm going to enjoy myself, he said to his wife before he used the stone to teleport himself out of the room. Those opposing Hela didn't know it yet, but they were in for a bad time. Naruto appeared in the center of the bridge leading to the Bifrost, where the undead army plus Scourge were fighting. All participants briefly stopped what they were doing as he arrived, but soon went back to their business. All but one, that is. A man dressed in an elegant green and gold outfit under Asgardian armor, along with a golden headpiece with two long curved horns, stepped forth. This man is Loki, the god of mischief. I'm sorry, but who might you be? Loki asked. Naruto looked him over briefly before answering. Well, if you want an official title, then it would be Hela's Vanguard. That or her husband. Both of those would work really, he answered calmly. Loki shook his head with a slight smile. I'm sorry, I thought I heard you say you were my sister's husband, but I'm sure I must have misheard. Naruto smiled at the man. No, you got it right. And you called her sister, so I guess you're my brother-in-law too. So you're Asgardian, Loki concluded. Somewhat. The blonde replied, I wasn't born here, but due to circumstances here I am. He added before using his staff to smack a warrior off the bridge into the sea below, without taking his eyes off him. Well, Loki began, as he kicked an undead knight away from him. I love chaos and destruction as much as the next god, but you, he said, pointing at Naruto, don't strike me as the type. So what's your game? He asked. My game? Originally it was to kill Odin for what he did to us, but he's dead now. There was once a time where I'd be against all of this. But after Odin betrayed us, and Asgard went ahead and swept us under the rug like we never existed, I couldn't care less about this place. Imagine having everything you had for Asgard only to end up being stabbed in the back. Everything we did was for the greatness of this place, and for what? Odin sealed my wife, and the people didn't care enough to spread word of our existence. They just let us fade away. Seeing that he had the man's full attention, he continued. But you want to know the worst part of it? It was with Odin's blessing that I married Hela and was accepted into the family. The man used to call me son, and would constantly tell me that he was glad I was the one his daughter had married. To have one of the people who seemingly cared about you the most turn on not just you, but his own blood. To find out they were wary of you. It changes you. He finished. For a moment Loki felt a pang of empathy. For he too felt Odin didn't really love him, as he had claimed. So what, you're here for revenge on the people then? No, I really don't care about the people anymore, the blonde answered. Or Asgard in general for that matter. But Hela wants her rightful place on the throne, and I'll help her get it, he added. Loki chuckled slightly. The man still wasn't getting it. Yes, I get it. You're in love with my sister, and will seemingly do anything to see her happy. That's fine, I get all that. But what's your deal? He asked, emphasizing your. Surely you have aspirations of your own rather than just following her around, he asked. The god needed information. He could feel the strength this man possessed. While he looked innocent enough, he stood tall, and didn't seem to worry about what was going on around him. The mere fact that he possessed the space stone, and had the ability to use it, was reason enough to be wary of him. If he could somehow convince this man to join him, then perhaps his chances of survival would increase. As he finished his train of thought, an image of a purple giant with golden armor appeared in his mind. You're right. I do have aspirations of my own, the blonde finally answered. You see, one of the main reasons why wars begin is due to lack of resources. There's too many mouths, not enough to go around. When Odin told me about the Infinity Stones, I looked into it anywhere I could. Eventually I found something. I found that should anyone possess all 6 stones, they will basically become omnipotent. That's when it hit me. With all 6 stones I could create unlimited resources in the universe. No more hunger, no more poverty, no more destroying planets for resources. Hela will rule Asgard, as she should, and I bring the universe as close to peace as possible. Of course there will be people who try to cause conflict for other reasons. But with the 6 stones in my possession, well, I think they'd think twice about it, don't you think? So you want to collect the Infinity Stones? Loki asked. Well, he looked calm on the outside, on the inside he was the embodiment of happiness. This was perfect. This might be the perfect person to beat him. Well, if that's the case, then there's something important you should know. You're not the only one. Now all that was left was to talk the man into joining him, and everything would go smoothly. Things were looking up for God. As Naruto was about to reply, a huge lightning bolt struck the palace where Hela and Thor were currently fighting. Naruto looked up and saw the god of thunder coming down in their direction. When he landed, he noticed that the man's right eye was black and no longer open. Standing beside Loki, Thor turned his head towards his brother. "Worry not, brother. He may be strong, but we can take him," he said before he ran forward, lightning charging itself around him. Loki didn't have the time to react, as his brother rushed in. "Wait. Stop you if I had it under control," Loki yelled. Unfortunately for him, his brother did not listen, and had already begun his assault. Loki watched, as the blonde just weaved and dodged every attack Thor threw at him. Thor, having realized that close combat wasn't working, jumped back and summoned lightning from his hand and directed it at Naruto. Said man brought his staff forward and began to spin it at a ridiculous speed in front of him. The lightning collided with the staff and dispersed soon after. As soon as the attack died down, Naruto used the staff to parry a lightning-enhanced punch to the right. The moment he parried, he swung his staff back around and hit Thor once in the ribs, before redirecting the staff to hit the man with the bottom of it under his chin. Both hits were done in rapid succession. Before Thor had a chance to compose himself, the blonde then kicked him hard in the chest, sending him stumbling back to Loki. The god of mischief watched, as his brother was completely outclassed, and merely stepped aside, letting his brother tumble past him, rather than help slow his body down. He noticed Thor getting up again, and it didn't take a genius to know he was going to try again. As Thor moved past him, he stopped him with a hand on his shoulder. "Why are you stopping me, brother?" he demanded. As he answered, a black and green portal opened up next to the blonde, and out of it stepped their sister. "Well, for one, Hela just arrived. And second, we were about to come to an arrangement before you arrived. I need you to stand down," Loki told him. Thor looked over at the two, and back to his brother, and nodded. He didn't want to back down, but decided to put his trust in Loki. However, just in case, he had instructed the Valkyrie to get the crown of Surtur, as he realized exactly what he had to do. If in the next few minutes they couldn't handle things peacefully, well, their home would be destroyed. "Now, as I was saying," Loki began, "you're not the only one who's looking to collect all 6 Infinity Stones. However, unlike you, this person isn't looking to use them for reasons as noble as you are." "I see, and are you planning on telling me who this person is?" Naruto asked. Loki grinned. "Perhaps we can come to an arrangement." Hela scoffed next to Naruto. "He really sounds like Odin. Really ticks me off," she commented. Naruto just looked at her amused before turning his attention back to Loki. "Okay, I'll bite. What kind of arrangement?" he asked, as he tilted his head to avoid an arrow. "We become allies. This man is not one to take lightly. He's powerful, unbelievably so," he responded. "You're afraid," Hela said. "Whoever this person is must be far stronger than you, and you feel the need to seek protection," she added. Loki glared at her before willing his anger down. "It wouldn't make me angry at the moment." He could swallow his pride for the time being. "You're partially right," he admitted. "I do not seek protection, but rather allies, as he will no doubt come looking for me." "What do you mean, brother?" Thor asked seriously. He never once heard Loki admit to needing help. This was worrying. Loki was going to answer, but was beaten to it by the blonde man. "Your brother must have worked for him at some point. He began, either you screwed up, and he's after you, or you backstabbed him. Either way, you're on his shit list," he clarified. As he finished his sentence, he noticed that the ship that was being loaded with the Asgardian people was beginning to take off. He closed his eyes and gathered his chakra. Using his magnet release, he created the magnetic field around the area and pulled the ship back down, crashing into the bridge they were on. "Alright, so what do you want from this alliance then?" Thor was stunned. His brother, the god of mischief and lies, was actually solving their issue with arguably the 2 strongest beings they've seen in a civil manner. He never thought he'd see the day. "All I ask is that when that man comes to try and kill me, you give me a hand with him. Likewise, he'll be coming after you soon too. After all, you're in possession of an Infinity Stone, so he'll try and take it from you," Loki answered. "That, and you leave the people of Asgard in peace." Thor butted in, glaring at his brother briefly for not mentioning that bit in his negotiation. "You can have all the peace you want around here, as long as they kneel before me," Hela answered back. "That's all they have to do. I'm the rightful heir to the throne, and, as such, I'm their queen. Once they kneel before me, this can all end. We'll accept this so long as the executions cease. No ruling with an iron fist. This isn't your time anymore. Times have changed. People have changed," Thor said. Hela narrowed her eyes, and was about to retort when the ground began shaking. Everyone looked up, as a large chunk of the land behind them exploded, as a giant monster of earth and fire began rising above Asgard. "Oh no," Thor whispered. "What did you do?" Loki asked angrily. "I sent the Valkyrie to release Surtur, as he was cut off by his fellow blonde. Destroying Asgard would drain Hela of her power," he finished. "Tremble before me, Asgard. yelled Surtur as he raised his sword high in the air. Would have been a brilliant plan had I not been here as well. Naruto commented as he watched Surtur wind up his weapon. Naruto stood calmly and materialized a truth-seeking orb through his hand and willed it to take the form of a large disc. I'll be back in a second, don't do anything stupid now, he said before a blue and black portal opened behind him and took him in. Thor was tempted to attack Hela now that the blonde was gone, but decided against it. Everyone watched as Surtur swung his giant blade down into the city, destroying a few buildings before something unthinkable happened. As he was scraping the sword along the ground, it hit something before turning into dust. What has happened? Thor asked what happened to Surtur's weapon. He followed up looking at Hela, then at his team. It was the black shield he created. It's one of the many abilities my beloved can use, Hela answered. Yes, of course it is, isn't it? Loki asked rhetorically. Seriously, how many abilities did this man have? Over in the center of Asgard, the blonde was looking up at the giant, as if appraising him. Well, you're bigger than last time, that's for sure, the blonde commented. Not that it'll make much of a difference for you though. Rather than answer, Surtur brought his hands up high in the air, preparing a hammer fist. At least that was the plan. Seeing what was to come, Naruto once more activated the stone and disappeared from his spot before reappearing above them. Once more creating a truth-seeking orb, he changed it into the shield once more and thrust it straight into the giant's arms. The effect was immediate, his arms all the way to the elbow turned to dust. The giant let out a monstrous scream, not in pain, but in anger. Willing the stone to send him back to the floor, he activated his magnet release once more, while the beast was screaming. As he raised his arms in the air, the destroyed pieces that were buildings of Asgard levitated into the air around him. He created 5 giant nails out of the debris, and made a motion with his hand. All at once the 5 pieces flew to the giant, 2 empathizing with him on each leg before the final one embedded itself in his chest. Now to finish him off, he commented. He smacked the bottom end of his staff into the floor and allowed himself to be pulled into the portal once more. He reappeared in front of the now kneeling Surtur and brought his hands up in a single hand sign. Senpo. Ranton Kauga, he thought, before releasing a very sharp thin stream of light from his mouth. He twisted his head back and forth rapidly and was pleased as the beam easily cut the giant in half at the waist and removed its head from the body. The head dropped down and landed with a very hard thud which left a small crater in the ground. The blonde approached it before turning it to dust with a simple thrust of his arm. With the crown of Surtur having been reduced to dust, the eternal flame which had powered the man was put out. Within seconds all that remained of the giant was bones and ashes. Asgard for the most part was intact with the exception of the few buildings he managed to destroy. Having finished what he had come to do, he tapped his staff and was once again being pulled into the portal. Back on the bridge, both Thor and Loki were staring at the distance in disbelief. That shouldn't be possible, the god of thunder said out loud. At that moment their final team member joined them on the bridge. Thor, what happened to Surtur? She asked as she jumped high into the sky before landing next to the brothers. One moment she saw the giant prepare to destroy the city, and the next he was gone. As she moved her gaze from where Surtur had been, she realized that the two weren't fighting against Hela like she had expected. She was about to ask about this when she stopped dead in her tracks. Next to the goddess of death, a portal opened up, and out of it came someone she had hoped to never see again. Her eyes widened and her mouth dried up. She tried to talk, but no words would escape her. Even the sound of Thor's voice asking her what's wrong couldn't help her. All she could think about was the day she and her sisters-in-arms were decimated by Hela and the blonde. How easily he had brushed them off. Hela was powerful, yes, but the blonde was on a completely different level. Valkyrie. That finally got through to her. I don't know what has you so shaken up, but fear not. We're close to resolving the problem. Hela's husband is surprisingly a lot more reasonable than she is, Thor told her. Well, began Loki, watching you take care of that pile of bones was entertaining, but we do have matters to attend to. So do we have a deal? He asked. The blonde rubbed his chin in thought. What do you think? He asked, turning to Hela. The goddess turned to the Asgardians and stared at them for a minute before speaking. That depends. Will Asgard be left under my rule? She asked the trio. As long as you honor your part of the deal, we'll leave Asgard to you, Thor conceded. Not exactly how I imagined this playing out, but very well. We have a deal, Naruto said. As the words left the blonde's mouth, Loki let out a breath he didn't know he had been holding. They had really lucked out. Had it been someone more arrogant or power-hungry, he doubted things would have gone this smooth. Naruto turned to Hela and nodded in the direction of the undead warriors, who were still in a deadlock with the remaining Asgardian forces. Understanding what it was that he wanted from her, she walked forward towards her army. Though they had a truce at the moment, the Asgardian trio were still on very high alert as she passed by them. Halt, she commanded. The battle is over. Pull back. Her army followed her order obediently and began walking back towards Asgard. Thor walked up as well and said his piece. Citizens of Asgard, we have come to an agreement. Hela will be the new ruler of Asgard. Seeing that some people were getting wide-eyed, he quickly continued. But worry not, as I shall be around to make sure she keeps her end of the agreement. He added, successfully calming the crowd down. Now please. Let us make our way back to Asgard. An hour later the group of 6, since Banner had finally landed, were in the throne room. The room was missing a ceiling, as Thor and Hela had destroyed it during their battle earlier on. The goddess wasted no time in taking her spot on the throne. Naruto took his spot standing beside her, and crossed his arms, his staff still in hand. Alright. Time to keep you part of the deal. Naruto asked Loki who is it that's coming after the Infinity Stones. As Loki was about to answer, they noticed that the sky above them was getting darker, and in seconds Asgard was covered in darkness. Jumping onto the roof of the building, they noticed a ship slowly coming down. It was many times larger than the ones the Asgardian people were trying to escape in. Turning his attention back to the blonde, he spoke. That would be the Mad Titan Thanos. Thanos? Huh. The blonde says to himself, as he watches the spacecraft hover above them. The citizens of Asgard had already run into the city in a panic. The group watched, as a blue beam shot out of the ship, hitting the ground a few yards away from them. In a split second, 2 figures appeared. The first was an ash-gray figure, short in stature, who had white hair slicked back. The man had no nose, and wore dark gray armor with some gold trim. The second was a little taller than the first. He's a reptilian-looking man with scales. He wore similar armor to the first, though he left his left shoulder exposed, and wielded a large metal chain hammer. So which one of these two is Thanos? Naruto asked Loki to take his eyes off the two. Neither. The god of mischief replied. These two are his children. He clarified. Really? Hela interrupted. Truly faces only a mother could love. She mocked. Naruto chuckled, and was about to speak when he was cut off by the shorter of the two invaders. Hear me, and rejoice. The short one began. For your salvation has arrived. You will have the privilege of being saved by the great Titan. And in your certain death, every last one of you will become children of Thanos. He continued. Today. Whatever he was going to say was stopped, as Thor interrupted. Loki. Who the hell are these two? He asked. The son of Odin. My name is Ebony Maw, and this is called Sidine. The now named Maw introduced. We are the children of Thanos, and we are here for one thing, and one thing only. He said before pointing at Naruto's staff. The stone. Naruto lifted the staff up to his face, and stared at the two through the C-shape. You mean this one right here? He asked rhetorically while pointing at it. Yeah, that's gonna be a no. He says while resting it on his shoulder. You have been going on for a bit about this Thanos though. He's the one that wants it, right? Tell him to come down here himself if he wants it. Naruto challenged, the smile never leaving his face. Maw on the other hand did not look as happy. He narrowed his eyes, and held his arms behind his back. Without turning to his partner, he gave the order. Bring me the stone. Kahl made a grunt of acknowledgement, and slammed his hammer down before walking their way. Everyone, but Naruto and Hela, prepared for battle, but were stopped, as Naruto raised a hand. Kahl sped up, and jumped high into the air, preparing to bring the hammer down. Move. Naruto ordered, as they all jumped back. Not needing to use hand signs, the blonde inhaled a deep breath of air before expelling it in short rapid bursts. The result was wind bullets traveling faster than the eye could see. Kahl managed to shield himself from 3 using the hammer, but was eventually hit by 6 of them in the chest. Naruto did not give him time to recuperate. He appeared in front of him, and began whirling the air around them. He began making slicing motions with his hands in front of Kahl. The man's chest armor broke effortlessly, as an X began appearing on his chest where the wind was cutting into him. Seconds later the wind had managed to completely cut through the man, leaving only pieces of the scaled man remaining. Now only one thing remains. Naruto said. Ma narrowed his eyes, and raised his arms. Debris laying around began to levitate, as the man prepared his attack. Naruto stared up at the ship before closing his eyes, and activating his magnet release around the entire area. He raised his arm towards the ship, made a fist, and began pulling. To everyone's amazement, the giant ship began coming down before hitting the ground with a force that could be felt for miles. When the shaking stopped, and the smoke from the impact cleared, another blue beam hit the ground. This time a more imposing figure stepped out. The giant purple man stood tall. He wore golden armor with a matching golden helmet. On his left hand was a matching gold gauntlet. Though what caught everyone's attention was the bright purple stone shining from just above the knuckle. That's Thanos, Loki said in slight fear. Being around the Mad Titan always put him on edge. So you're the Mad Titan? Naruto asked, stepping forward, the staff still resting on his shoulder. He noticed the giant man's eyes focus on the stone the whole time before focusing on him. That's the name that stuck with me in the past years, so yes. You're an interesting one though. To be able to wield an infinity stone is not something just anyone can do. Who are you? Thanos asked. Naruto Uzumaki. The blonde answered. I'll try and remember that. Now you have something that belongs to me. Thanos said, looking at the stone once again. Is that so? Funny. I was about to tell you the same thing. Naruto answered while pointing his staff at the gauntlet. I see. Ma, take care of the others. I'll get the stone myself. Ma nodded, and began his attack, while Thanos stared down the blonde. Naruto knew Thanos was on a different level than the other two. The way the man carried himself was proof of that. Most would be sweating in apprehension knowing that a titan was heading their way, but not him. After years of being sealed away, and his power being unmatched in the world, he felt a shiver of excitement run up and down his spine. An opponent who would put up a hell of a fight. He was by no means a battle maniac, but even he couldn't resist a good battle every now and then. He gripped the staff hard, and the space stone began glowing, as if ready for the fight, as well. The ground underneath Naruto broke, as he charged at Thanos. The Mad Titan's eyes widening at the speed. Naruto went for a punch that Thanos tried to anticipate, but it was a fake out, as Naruto twisted his body in to give a heel kick, but Thanos was just as quick. Grabbing Naruto by his heel, he started to spin, going so fast that all the others would be able to see was a golden purple blur. Releasing Naruto, Thanos gave chase. Striking Naruto while he was still flying until finally grabbing the man by the face and slamming the back of his head in the ground. Usually that would have taken a normal person out, but not our favorite blonde. He did not even have time to reach for the staff, as Naruto got back up rolling his neck with a cheeky smile, not a bad old-timer. Are you ready to get serious now? Thanos gave a chuckle, taking off his armor and his gauntlet. You have a lot of spunk warriors, I admire that. Something I used to have when I was younger. Naruto was once again on Thanos, rearing his tight fist back, as the Mad Titan did the same. A massive shockwave followed sending his guardians flying. Thor could only look in awe at the powerful display in front of him. Loki watched in unease, hoping things would go his favor. If his brother-in-law couldn't beat the Titan, no one would. Hela watched in pride. Pride that her husband could go toe-to-toe with one of the most powerful beings in the universe, and hold his own. Standing in the middle of the busted street were the two. Naruto's first meeting Thanos, as the two battled for dominance. Then with a roar, and a blinding light Naruto was in his most powerful form. His armor glowing white, as his six paths power was activated for the first time in what felt like forever. With his now enhanced strength, he sent Thanos skipping along the street from the power of his punch. That alone though would not be enough to stop Thanos. The man regained his footing, and got on the defensive. Naruto appeared in front of him, and began throwing combinations of punches and kicks which were deflected. Likewise Thanos tried using his bigger form to try and cause as much damage as he could. One of his punches was actually caught by the blonde before being tossed aside. Using that brief window did a jumping spin kick to the face that landed, and managed to have the Titan stumble back briefly. He didn't have much time to recuperate, as the blonde was on him. Naruto buried the staff into the ground at the handle, and quickly launched 4 chakra-enhanced punches to the chest and ribs in the blink of an eye. If the grimace on the Titan's face was any indication, he would say they were doing their job, inflicting damage even through the armor. Calling his staff to him using his magnet release, in a split second, he thrust it forward using the curved end to grasp the man's throat and lift him into the air. On his left hand a mini Rasen shuriken formed, which was then flicked into the man's chest, sending him flying away before detonating, creating a massive dome of energy. The dome glowed purple for a few seconds before dispersing. Thanos walked out of the attack, body releasing some smoke, and multiple cuts here and there along with a few bruises on his face, but relatively okay. An interesting attack. He admitted it's been a while since someone was able to harm me this much. He added. The Mad Titan raised his gauntlet up, and let the stone glow ominously. It seems I'll have to take this more seriously than I anticipated. However, I'll give you one last chance to hand over the stone before I'm forced to take it from you. You know you never did say what you wanted the stones for. Enlighten me. Naruto said, his space stone matching the glow of the power stone. Well, seeing as how you won't be alive much longer, I'll humor you. The universe is overpopulated. Too many mouths, not enough to go around. He began. Naruto nodded his head in agreement that there were too many people with not enough resources. With the infinity stones I can snap my fingers, and half the universe will cease to exist. Some would call it genocide, but I call it mercy. Saving them from imminent starvation. He finished. Right? What about after they're gone? People could just start reproducing again, and this problem would repeat itself. See, I have a better idea. With the infinity stones I can create unlimited resources. Enough to go around for everyone. I'd end world hunger, war over resources, and much more. Which is why I'm going to have to take the stone from you. Naruto said, as he spun the staff quickly before slamming it into the ground. If you do that, all living creatures would depend on one being. They'd stop striving for greater heights. I'd love to continue a philosophical conversation, but I have a universe to balance. I'll be taking the stone. Thanos said, as a beam of purple light erupted from the gauntlet. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto spun the staff rapidly in front of him, similar to how he did to Thor, and managed to hold off the attack. Unlike Thor's attack, however, this had a lot more power behind it, as he had to quickly step aside, as the attack became too much. Had he held on longer, the staff would have broken. He ducked quickly to avoid a power stone enhanced punch before smacking away another fist, returning one of his own. It made contact, but didn't stop the Titan. He had to hand it to him. Even in his rusty six paths form, the man could still hold his own. He threw a straight right which was caught by Thanos, before being hit with an infinity stone enhanced left hand which sent him flying. The Mad Titan wasn't finished, as he rushed forward and once more let off a purple beam of energy from the gauntlet. This time, the beam hit its target. Naruto grit his teeth, as his body was no longer in peak condition to handle the six paths form at the moment, and the concentrated energy from the Infinity Stone was doing more damage than it should have. He barely managed to leap to the right to avoid an energy blast, but was caught by a kick to the chest by the giant. His back hit the solid gold wall of a building which managed to stop him from being sent further. Damn, he's powerful enough on his own. That stone just amplifies his power even more. Gonna have to end this, he thought, as he brought his right hand up. On his fingertips 5 different colored spheres materialize, each being a different element combined with a mini dot. He slammed the staff into the ground, before tossing the spheres into the portal that it opened. Getting his bearings together, he flew forward, and met with the Titan once more. He landed, and blocked 2 punches before kicking the man in the chest, sending the man stumbling back slightly. Taking a deep breath, he exhaled it all in one breath, releasing a single line of pressurized air. Thanos saw it coming, and managed to duck. Had he turned around, he would have seen pieces of some of the buildings of Asgard being sliced like butter. As he looked up, he noticed the blonde was missing. He realized too late to look behind him, as he felt a sharp pain on his spine. The blonde had hit him with the bottom end of the staff right in the center of his back. Even with the special armor, the staff managed to break through and make contact. Naruto saw the Titan drop to a knee, as a result of the chakra-enhanced stab to the back, and saw it as his best opportunity to end it. He teleported in front of Thanos, and delivered a strong enough uppercut to the chin that managed to lift the man into the air. He slammed his staff into the floor, and opened a portal above the man. Out of it came the 5 orbs he had previously created. At point-blank range, Thanos didn't have the time to protect himself, and could only brace himself for the impact. Not wanting to be caught in the attack, the blonde allowed himself to be pulled backwards into the blue portal, and got out of the area. Naruto reappeared a couple thousand feet away where the others were battling Maw. Everyone turned when they felt the ground shake, followed by a big explosion. "So I take it Thanos has been handled, darling?" Hela asked. She noted he had some bruising in the face, along with some bits of his arm broken. He spit up a bit of blood. "Should be. He's really durable. Took some of my powerful attacks head on, and still fought like nothing happened. We'll find out in a few," he asked before looking at a panting Maw who was floating atop of a piece of debris. "Are you guys having trouble with him?" he asked, as he began to float. "It's his telekinesis that's the problem," Thor answered. "He has great control over it. Once we get too close, he simply levitates, and uses the surrounding area against us," Loki answered. He was going to add more when they had to move out of the way of a purple beam. Maul widened his eyes at what he saw, and quickly rushed to his master's side. Thanos stood in front of them once more, though not as he had before. The man no longer had most of his upper body armor. Only a small bit remained on his left shoulder. His helmet is all but gone. He was sporting multiple burns along his body, and the front of his forearms were cut up so badly you could no longer see his purple skin on them. "Master, are you alright?" Ma asked, as he levitated objects around them to act as protection. Taking a few deep breaths, the man replied, "I live. It seems I greatly underestimated not only his strength, but the control he has over the space stone. We're going to have to return for it some other time." This gravely shocked Ma, as he'd never seen his master retreat, but he was not one to question orders. Thanos flexed the gauntlet, and let off a powerful scream before slamming a fist to the floor. The ground shook and exploded, the shockwave destroying everything in its path courtesy of the Power Stone. Naruto and the group had no choice but to move so as to not be hit. In that time, Ma and Thanos were beamed back into their ship, and quickly began ascending back into the sky. "Should we try to stop them?" asked the Valkyrie, as they were running. "No," answered Naruto. "I've reached my limit for now. I've been sealed for too long that my body won't handle my full power at the moment. I can still access my most powerful form, but it doesn't do the same damage it used to. We'll have to let them go for now. He'll be back." Finally they turned back, and saw that they were in the clear. A large part of Asgard had been turned to rubble, but nothing that couldn't be rebuilt. "This is bad," Loki began. "He'll see you as a major threat now. I'm certain he's going to collect the other stones before saving you for last. Once the other 4 are in his possession, he'll be almost impossible to deal with. Even if you have a stone, then we'll have to stop him from getting the others. Or at least beat him to some of them," Hela responded. "Do any of you know anyone who might have some information?" she asked her brothers. They said nothing for a moment before the god of mischief smiled. "Actually, yes." Everyone turned to him. "As a matter of fact, my brother happens to know of a few people who might be able to help us out." Thor's eyes lit up, as he knew who his brother was talking about. "Yes, Loki is right," he said before turning to one person who seemed really out of place. "Banner. Looks like we're going to be meeting with the Avengers," he said happily. "Who are the Avengers?" Naruto asked in confusion, having never heard of the group. Hela shrugged her shoulders, equally confused. "They're Earth's mightiest heroes," Thor replied. "They'll be of great help, I promise you." "Alright. So where is this Earth?" Naruto asked, ready to go. "It's Midgard," Hela answered. Oh? We'll have to use the Bifrost then, as I don't know exactly where we're going so I can't use the stone. He said. Very well, I don't believe we damaged it during the battle, so we should be all set. Let's be off. Thor said, as they began walking. As they walked, Naruto couldn't help but wonder what kind of beings were in Midgard. If Hela's brothers knew them, then they must be powerful. He shook his head. He wrapped his arm around the goddess of death and continued their walk. All he knew was that he had infinity stones to collect, as his greatest battle was rapidly approaching. Thanks for watching my video. Leave a like if you enjoyed my video, and also do consider subscribing to my channel for more awesome content. See you next time. Till then, sayonara.